Welcome to the video presentation entitled 17 Keys to Effective Ministry to Inactive Members. This video features Dr. Kenneth Houck, whom I have known both personally and professionally for many years. Dr. Houck's vision has always been simple and clear, namely, that the church be as whole and as complete as it can be, and that the way to realize this vision is through the priesthood of all believers. As Christians, we are called to minister one to another and to reach out to the world around us. In 1975, Dr. Houck launched what is now known as the Stephen Series, a system to train and organize lay people for one-on-one Christian caregiving ministry through their congregations. Since 1978, he has also been researching, consulting, and conducting many workshops and seminars in the field of ministering to inactive members. Dr. Houck is in great demand as a keynote speaker and featured leader at conferences and conventions, and at least part of that demand has been in response to his authorship of the book, Reopening the Back Door: Answers to Questions About Ministering to Inactive Members. He has also developed a training course for use in the local congregation entitled Caring for Inactive Members: How to Make God's House a Home. These valuable resources have been helping congregations to become much more effective in their ministry to inactive members. I believe that what Dr. Houck will share with you in this video is one of the most practical and workable approaches I know of to providing ministry to the inactive members of your congregation. In this presentation, you will hear an echo of Jesus' words. Inasmuch as you have done it to the least of these, you have done it to me. Take notes as you like, and then reflect on what Dr. Houck says and how it relates specifically to you and your congregation. Now, here is Dr. Kenneth Houck to bring you 17 keys to effective ministry to inactive members.
I'm going to get started by asking you a few questions. First of all, whose favorite ministry is working with inactive members? Here's another question. Have you ever heard of a happy inactive member ministry committee? Or another question. Have you ever heard of an inactive member ministry committee picnic? These are fun questions, but they are questions that indicate the present state of affairs with regard to church inactivity. Your involvement in this very important topic puts you right on the cutting edge of an issue that affects the entire Christian church. It is a rare congregation indeed that is not significantly affected by inactivity. Inactive members exist across the entire spectrum of Christianity: large and small congregations, urban and rural, small town and suburban worshiping communities. Research indicates that on an average, 30 to 35% of a congregation is inactive. You know, it's interesting. Congregations oftentimes have special ministries to singles, to youth, to older persons, for example. But yet one of the most sizable segments of the congregation's membership, inactive members, often receives hardly any attention at all. As we get into this subject, I think it is important for us to realize that when members become inactive, the church is diminished far more profoundly than mere numerical calculations would suggest. There are at least 3 ways the church is impoverished by inactivity. The first one is little or no ministry to the inactive member. The inactive individual's spiritual growth may be impaired without the nurture of the gospel in a community of believers. The second is reduced ministry within the congregation. ministry opportunities within the congregation are lost. Ministry among the people of God is an exchange, people ministering to each other. The congregation loses its chance to be ministered to and enlightened by inactive members when they are not present. And the third way the church is impoverished by inactivity is lessened ministry by the congregation. When congregations are reduced and weakened by the absence of members, ministry opportunities to the world, the proclamation of God's love in Jesus Christ, are abbreviated and lost. So, as a result of inactivity, inactive members suffer, congregations suffer, and the world suffers. Everybody loses. To define inactivity is to begin to understand it. Here's a definition. Inactive members are individuals who have chosen not to participate in the worship life, financial support, and program activities of the congregation. So, inactivity is defined by non-participation in three areas: worship life, financial support, and program activities. Now, with this definition as a foundation, let's look now at 17 keys to effective ministry to inactive members. The first one is, ask yourself, whose needs are being fulfilled? Think for a moment about the reasons why you and your congregation would like to minister to inactive members. Whose needs are you attempting to fulfill? The needs of the congregation or the needs of inactive members? I think to a great extent, congregations have been interested in reaching out to inactive members primarily or even solely to fulfill their own needs, institutional needs, and they have been much less concerned about the needs of inactive members themselves. What a lot of church members don't realize is how quickly inactive people are able to size up active members of the congregation and can tell if the interactions are prompted by love and a genuine desire to care, or because they are doing it for the church. Now, I suppose there's nothing wrong with being concerned about the church. But when you are face to face with an inactive member, do you really care about that person and his or her needs? Key number 2 is focus on their agenda, not yours. So often, when active members relate to inactive members, the active members follow their own agenda. They have certain objectives, certain goals for themselves and for the congregation, and they do all they can to follow their own agenda. Here's a real-life example of what I mean. Susan Smith is going to visit Jennifer Jones, an inactive member who was divorced a short time ago. Susan feels quite strongly that Jennifer belongs in church, and she does not want to let slip the opportunity to get Jennifer to understand what she really ought to do. So she rehearses beforehand how she will bring up the subject of Jennifer's inactivity. Susan says to herself, "This is how I'll work into the subject of her poor church attendance. First of all, I'll introduce myself to her, and then I'll make some comments about her home, the decor, for example. Next, I'll probably talk with her about her divorce. And finally, I'll mention her poor church attendance and invite her back to church." If you really care about inactive members, you will seek to find out what their agenda is, what their concerns are, and will do so selflessly. Now, how do you do this? One very practical way you can get at their agenda is by asking certain open-ended questions, such as these. How are things going with you? Or, fill me in on what's been happening with you. These are very simple questions, actually. So, encourage them to share their concerns, let them relate what is going on within them, do all you can to learn about who they are, for no other reason than you genuinely care. Key number 3, abolish all communications by letter. Absolutely forget about sending letters to inactive members. Burn or destroy all letters, prototype letters, form letters, mimeograph machines, word processors. Totally eradicate from your mind even the faintest thought of sending letters to inactive members for the purpose of building a relationship with them or to bring them back to church. If, however, you want to make people angry, alienate them, or induce them to leave, then use letters. In conducting workshops on ministering to inactive members, I have asked participants if they had ever seen where a letter was successful in reaching out to inactive members. And I did this for a period of time for a total of 18 workshops, averaging 100 to 150 in attendance. Of all the times that I asked this question, only one person ever gave an example of when a letter had been successful. I was intrigued, and I asked that person to fill us in. She explained that the letter was successful in that it helped a particular family to decide to join another church. Now, those who have used letters in the past have not been malicious in intent. The intent has almost certainly been great care. Inactive members, however, typically receive these communications quite differently. Letters, however well intended, will undoubtedly produce results exactly opposite to what you might hope. They don't make people feel good, and they certainly don't bring people back to church. Incidentally, newsletter articles aimed at inactive members trying to get them to come back to church don't work either. If anything, these articles make inactive people angry. Now, active people might think the articles are right on target, very creative, just what is needed. But inactive members feel pressured and resentful. Ask them sometime. And by the way, this has nothing to do with sending the church newsletter to inactive members on a regular basis. Certainly keep them on your mailing list. The point is not to single them out as a target group in the pages of the newsletter. This leads into key number 4. Contact people personally. Reach out and touch them, not only by phone, but with one or more personal visits. Probably more. And that's where love starts to be felt by the inactive member. When someone cares enough to make personal contact, that's how God showed care and love for the human race, by personal contact. It seems the least we can do for inactive members. Now, one formerly inactive member said to me these words: I very literally and deeply love the people who cared enough to make contact with me when I was inactive. Number 5 is, listen, don't lecture. Really listen to inactive members. Discover what needs they have. And this is a key of great importance. Without listening, we can never truly discover an inactive member's reason or reasons for inactivity. I've heard it said many times that inactive members will not share the true reasons for their inactivity. They will. They truly will. But you have to really listen. Another reason this fifth key is so important is that often the inactive member needs a good listener who will compassionately be there while the inactive member ventilates strong feelings that may be keeping him or her away. A formerly inactive member once said to me, "All throughout my inactivity, I longed for someone who would empathically listen to my pain so that I could get rid of those hurtful feelings and regain a sense of equilibrium in my emotional and spiritual life." You might think that this key, listen, don't lecture, is an obvious one and that no one would ever stoop to lecturing. Quite the contrary. More often than not, individuals relating to inactive members actually end up doing more of the talking, trying to prescribe solutions. And I'd like to say something about prescribing solutions. It's all right to do as long as you know every detail about the past, present, and future of the other person's life. In other words, it's all right as long as you know as much as God does about that individual. Otherwise, try more listening. Number 6, enjoy. What, you might think? Enjoy relating to inactive members? Yes, you can very much enjoy interacting with inactive members. One of the most common misconceptions about working with inactive members is that it has to be an unrewarding and unsatisfying exercise in futility. There is an attitudes assessment questionnaire in Module 1 of the course Caring for Inactive Members, How to Make God's House a Home. I was conducting an early workshop using these course materials, and there was a man sitting right down in the front, and he motioned me over and read aloud number 24 on that questionnaire, which reads, "I would look forward to relating to inactive members." He looked up and said to me, "You're kidding, right?" And I told him absolutely not. I'm not kidding. Relating to inactive members can be one of the most pleasurable and rewarding aspects of your spiritual journey. Inactive members are exciting, intriguing, enriching people. And I'll promise you this, when you relate to inactive members, you won't be bored. Number 7, avoid defensiveness. Minimize as much as possible defensive reactions when talking with inactive members. Just listen. Accept what they say. You don't have to defend God, your congregation, the church leaders, or anything. In fact, vehemently defending will just set up an argumentative situation of going back and forth, and nothing really will be resolved. So often we get defensive and try to argue people point by point, and it does absolutely no good. Now, I've seen some literature on relating to inactive members that gives sample responses to certain things inactive members might say. In effect, a manual to argue them point by point. This approach just doesn't work. Every good argument you might have for their coming to church will be countered by the inactive member. You really don't get anywhere. Even when you might rationally argue the other person down and he or she admits defeat, inside, that person probably doesn't go along with you. The individual may even come to church once. Key number 8 is also a difficult one to do, but a very important one. Accept anger. Now, how do you view possible feelings of anger on the part of inactive members? Think about that. I want to say, thank God if an inactive member comes out with angry feelings. Yes, thank God. What this means is that the individual still cares. People who don't care anymore don't act angry. They are just blasé or apathetic. They have little or no emotional reaction. But when there is an emotional reaction of any kind, there is cause for hope. People sometimes get angry with God, and that's all right. God is strong enough. God can take it. We don't have to be God's public defender. I actually think it is unhealthy to cut an inactive member off when he or she is really letting God have it. Feelings are there, and they cannot be swept under the rug or stifled. Angry feelings need to be expressed. There are no shortcuts. Also, I believe that people have every right to release anger or pain as it concerns the church. But it's just that we sometimes feel so uncomfortable when they do it. Now, I realize that accepting anger is difficult. Perhaps the most difficult thing to do in relating to another human being. But if you can do this, you are going to go a long way toward effectively relating to inactive members. And incidentally, much of the time, behind the anger of inactive members, there are feelings of hurt. And when you accept the anger, you will soon be getting at the hurt. And this is extremely productive. Key number 9. Don't ask for money. You may chuckle, but I've heard of too many instances where members of stewardship drives have gotten in touch with inactive members to ask them for money or a pledge. Now, there are at least 2 problems with this. One is that these people are not currently involved in the church, and it might even be incongruent for them to contribute financially if they are not participating in worship or program activities. The second problem with asking for money, and this is probably the most serious problem, is that oftentimes members become inactive and nobody gets in touch with them. Then when someone does get in touch with them, it is for the purpose of asking for money. The point is to get in touch with them early on in their inactivity, to check in with them out of concern for them, not the monetary needs of the congregation. Number 10, keep an open mind. Here, I just like to simply say, be open and willing to take a look at yourself and your congregation. There are 2 benefits of doing this. First, the process of keeping an open mind is a great way to show to inactive members that you care about them and value their thoughts and feelings. And second, you will be surprised and pleased to realize that inactive members may very well have something to teach you. Number 11, look for recurrent themes. As part of listening, keep a lookout for comments that repeat themselves by a number of inactive members. If more than one person mentions the same issue, your antennae ought to go up. By paying attention to these recurrent themes, you just might be able to improve your congregation's ministry. Now, one person said to me, "You have to watch out. You can't let inactive members run the church." I go along with what that individual said to this extent. Active members need to be listened to as well. All members of the congregation need to have the opportunity to make known their thoughts and feelings. Then, when recurrent themes do emerge, you can feel a high degree of confidence that these are significant issues. Now, at the same time, always keep in mind the special place your inactive members occupy. For many of them, the church has not met their needs, and your chances for learning about weaknesses and opportunities for your congregation can be enhanced. Number 12, bring back feedback. When you hear comments that might be helpful to the congregation, bring these back to appropriate boards, committees, or individuals. This can be a tremendous opportunity for learning and growth. Now, out of respect and confidentiality, ask the inactive members' permission to share the information. Do you think they will give that permission? They most certainly will. Most of the time, inactive members will very willingly give you this permission because they care too. Bringing back feedback, incidentally, is also a great way to affirm inactive members. When you take back their thoughts, feelings, and ideas, they will feel listened to. Number 13, make changes. To adapt an oft-quoted phrase, God isn't finished with us or our congregation yet. Oftentimes, the biggest change that needs to be made is a greater spirit of openness. Openness to new ideas, to diversity, to get out of always associating with only a limited number of people each Sunday. We might even have to open a closed circle to let people in. Number 14, let your presence be an invitation. Here's something that might seem radical to you, but it really isn't. Invite by your presence. In other words, as you go about relating to inactive members, you actually may not want to issue them a specific verbal invitation to come to church. Here's why. As you go about interacting with inactive members, they probably know that you are a part of a particular congregation. Whatever you do, whether you are relating to them formally or informally, you are a representative of your congregation. Inactive members know that. You don't have to hit them over the head with that fact. It is much better for inactive members to invite themselves, for them to bring up the subject of church, rather than your having to do that. And most of the time, maybe even 99 times out of 100, they will bring it up. And that is really good because it makes the issue of church their agenda. Many times it has happened that inactive members have been invited back to church prematurely when they weren't ready to receive an invitation. And that premature invitation scared them and ended up driving them further away. A vast majority of inactive members know where the church is located, what the worship times are, and the like. When they are reached out to and understood by someone from the congregation, if they want to come back to church, they will do so at their own initiative, and they will bring it up to you. Your caring and loving presence is much more of an invitation, an unspoken invitation, than just uttering words. Number 15, educate everyone. This key refers to educating as many as possible in the congregation as to the whys, wherefores, and hows of relating to inactive members. On the negative side, members of congregations can do abominable things when it comes to putting both feet firmly into their mouths. This is true whether they encounter an inactive member in church who has returned or happenstance encounters in the community. On the positive side, there are many things that members can do to act in hospitable ways toward inactive members. But these behaviors typically don't happen naturally. All existing boards, committees, and other groups in the church are candidates for education about inactivity. Sunday school teachers, deacons, and ushers make good groups to educate. And I'll tell you why ushers are good to include. A friend told me this story. An inactive member showed up at a Christmas Eve service, and one of the ushers did a comic book double take. He rushed over to the stone walls of the church and stretched his arms wide, straining as if to hold them up, while shouting over his shoulder, "Look out, the walls are going to come down. John Smith has come back to church." Incidents like this occur all the time, and proper education of many persons in the congregation can easily prevent harmful attempts at humor like this from happening. Sometimes what happens isn't even meant to be funny. I heard about an inactive member who decided to return to church. The first person she met on entering the building was someone who said, "It's about time you came back." That woman turned on her heels and never returned to that church again. Number 16, train a few. I think you should train intensively some individuals who are designated to reach out and contact inactive members as part of a formal visiting process. Although church staff, for example, can have a tremendous impact in visiting inactive members, you must multiply ministry by involving more than just church staff. There are even instances in which a layperson will have an advantage over church staff. The inactive person might expect the pastor or another staff person to get in touch. But when a layperson reaches out, that makes a powerful statement to the inactive member. Now, it's not that clergy should stop relating to inactive members, but laity must be trained to take part in this vital ministry as well. Training, though, is an absolute necessity. One reason why reaching out to inactive members has often been so ineffective or has seemed so much like drudgery is that people have gone into the task very ill-equipped. When people are trained, they will find their role much more gratifying and their visits much more satisfying. Our final key is probably the most important key of all. The first 16 keys lack true significance until you understand and use this final key, which is number 17, focus on process, not results. What I'm talking about here are goals. What are your goals in relating to inactive members? Think about that. Here are some possible goals in the course of ministering to or relating to inactive members. On the left-hand side is to get them to come back to church, that they work through any possible anger that they might have, that they don't feel hurt anymore, that they feel a sense of forgiveness, that they put God number one in priority. Another set of goals is on the right-hand side. To listen to the inactive member, to encourage the inactive member to share feelings, to ask the inactive member how he or she is doing, to share the love of Jesus Christ with the inactive member, to be fully present with the inactive member, to be the love of Jesus Christ with him or her. Look at these two sets of goals. Which set are you capable of fulfilling? Which of these types of goals do you yourself have control over? The first set of goals, which are on the left side of your page, are results goals. They focus on certain outcomes that might happen as a result of relating to inactive members. The second, on the right-hand side, are process goals. They focus on the process of caring, on the process of Christian loving. The distinction between process goals and results goals is at the heart of working with inactive members. Congregations and individual Christians have been extremely frustrated in relating to inactive members. And the reason is that they have been focusing on results goals. Moreover, inactive members hate with a passion interacting with active Christians who have results goals in mind. To give you further understanding, here are some other distinctions between process goals and results goals. Process goals take place in the here and now. Results goals look to the future. Process goals are actions. Results goals are outcomes. Process goals are focused on the means to an end. Results goals are focused on the end itself, with no attention to how it is to be achieved. And very importantly, process goals are ones you control. Results goals are ones the inactive member and ultimately God control. Now, I am personally very committed to inactive members coming back to church. I am passionately concerned about inactive members working through their potentially harmful feelings. In other words, I personally am very concerned about results. But I realize that to focus on results is almost certainly to ensure that results won't happen. What I'd like to suggest is that you forget about results goals, or at most keep them in the back of your mind. Concern yourself with process goals, and you will be doing good quality ministry when you relate to inactive members, which in turn will make it all the more likely that they will return to church. I maintain that it is possible to be 100% successful in ministering to inactive members. But it depends on the goals you set. If you set results goals, you are not going to be 100% successful. Probably, if you focus on results goals, you're going to be almost totally unsuccessful. If you concentrate on process goals, however, you can actually attain your goals 100% of the time. Process goals are ministry goals. They are goals of reaching out with the love and compassion of Jesus Christ. No matter what the inactive member does or does not do on a follow-up basis, you will have been Christ to that person. And incidentally, a good number of people ministered to in a process fashion do come back to church, precisely because they have been truly ministered to, not manipulated. Now, you may ask, are results goals ever beneficial in life? The answer is yes. They are beneficial for such activities as building bridges, paving highways, and fixing television sets. In those instances, it is very appropriate to set results goals. The difference is that results goals are great when you are dealing with things. Process goals are needed when you are dealing with people. I've talked to a great number of both clergy and laity about the differences between process and results goals. And this concept has always produced a tremendous aha experience, a revelation like scales falling from the eyes. Further, people have experienced tremendous relief. Individuals have said to me, "You mean I don't have to go and try to force people to come back to church? You mean I can just freely minister to them with the love of Jesus Christ? And that's my goal?" And I say a most emphatic yes. Earlier, I mentioned the joy of ministering to inactive members. Process goals are what make that joy possible. There is no joy in aiming for results goals. They have too much likelihood of failure and ineffectuality associated with them. That produces drudgery, painful tramping from one bad encounter to the next. Process goals don't come naturally. People have to be taught to understand the differences between process goals and results goals. How negative and self-defeating results goals are, and how beautiful process goals are. To reiterate, there are two reasons for choosing process goals. First, when you minister with process goals, ministry has already taken place regardless of what kind of results occur. You go and relate to an inactive member, being present with that person, listening to him or her, and you will truly be the embodiment of the love of Jesus to that individual. True ministry will have already happened right then and there. That's one good reason for taking a process approach. Second, the only way you are going to get results is through a process approach. And as far as I'm concerned, there is really only one choice of what approach to take. Well, these are 17 keys to effective ministry to inactive members. I know that given the proper motivation, the proper effort, the proper training, and the proper care, you can be highly successful in your ministry to inactive members. And I hope that each of these keys opens a door to new understanding for you, so that your compassion and love compel you to search out these homeless ones. You are called to the search by your faithful God. God bless you.